Imagine that you're at work and your boss pulls you aside and says that I've heard you've been stealing money from the company and I need you to prove to me that you haven't. But you're stunned because you haven't stolen anything. But how do you prove that? You can't point to evidence of not stealing. If you didn't steal, then there's no evidence of the non action. And this is called shifting the burden of proof. And it's one of the most common tricks that people use to win arguments without actually having anything to prove. Your boss made an accusation, but immediately demanded that you disprove it instead of proving evidence for it. But that's backwards. And understanding why it's backwards is crucial. Because the basic principle is that if someone claims something exists or that something has happened, they have the burden of proving it. They need evidence. They can't just make the claim and then demand that you prove them wrong, because the burden of proof lies with the person making the positive claim. Because things that exist leave evidence. If something happened, it had effects. It interacted with the world in ways that can be detected. If you actually stole from the company, then there would be missing inventory, or altered records, or security footage. Your boss could point to all of that evidence. But things that didn't happen leave no trace. Non-events don't interact with the world. If you don't steal, then there's nothing to point to. You can't bring nothing into the conversation as evidence. The absence of stealing is not a thing that you can demonstrate directly. And this is why the burden of proof always starts with the person making the existence claim. They are claiming something happened or that something exists. And if they are right, there should be evidence. It's their job to present it. This distinction becomes critical in legal systems. In criminal courts, the prosecution has to prove guilt. The defense doesn't necessarily have to prove innocence. Because guilt means something happened, that a crime was committed. And if a crime occurred, then there should be evidence. The prosecution's job is to present that evidence. Innocence means the crime did not happen or that the person did not do it. So the system doesn't require the defense to prove innocence. The prosecution must prove guilt, and if they fail to do so, the defendant is presumed innocent. And this is called the presumption of innocence, and it flows directly from the logic of burden of proof. We start by assuming that nothing happened until someone proves something did happen. We don't start by assuming guilt and demanding proof of innocence. Now, this might seem obvious for criminal law, but the same principle applies everywhere. If someone claims that Bigfoot exists, then they need to provide the evidence for it. You don't need to prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist, because that would require searching every forest on Earth and demonstrating the absence of Bigfoot in each location, which is impossible. Proving the non-existence of a secret conspiracy is impossible by definition. And this is where a lot of online arguments go very, very wrong. Someone makes a wild claim, and when you ask for the evidence, they say, "Prove me wrong." But that's just shifting the burden of proof. They made the claim, so they need to back it up. Your job is not to disprove every random assertion that someone throws out there. Imagine if we accepted this backwards approach. Anyone could claim anything and demand that you disprove it. The person making the claim would never have to provide any evidence. They could just sit back and watch you struggle to prove that something doesn't exist. But that's not how rational discussion works. Sometimes, though, both sides of a debate involve existence claims, and then both sides have burdens of proof. If someone says that God exists, they have the burden of proving that. But if somebody else says, I know for certain that God doesn't exist, then they're also making a claim that requires evidence. The difference is between saying X exists and saying I don't believe X exists. The first is a positive claim requiring proof. The second is a statement about your current level of belief based on some evidence that you might have encountered. When someone makes a factual claim, they need to support it with evidence. And if they can't, you are not the one required to disprove it. You can simply say, you haven't proved it to me. But social media has made this so much worse because anyone can make claims to a massive audience that this politician is corrupt, this product causes cancer, this event didn't really happen. And these claims spread so rapidly. And when someone asks for the evidence, the response is often, do your own research or prove me wrong. And that is dodging the burden of proof. If you're making the claim, you need to provide the evidence. Do your own research is not a substitute for meeting your burden of proof. It's just a way of making accusations without having to back them up. And this doesn't mean that everybody who does this is an evil or a manipulative person, because we all do it. When you believe something, ask yourself, what evidence do I have? And if somebody challenged me, could I point to actual evidence? Or do I just believe it because I want it to be true? If you can't provide enough evidence for your own beliefs, then you might be falling into the same trap that you criticize others in. You might be making claims that you can't support and you're hoping that no one notices. This is especially important for beliefs about other people. If somebody makes a claim about another person, then it's an existence claim. And if you're going to believe them or say them out loud, then you should have some evidence. Because you can't just assume bad motives and then demand others prove that the person is innocent. The burden of proof principle keeps distinctions grounded in reality. It prevents people from making endless, unsupported claims and putting the burden on everyone else to disprove them. It forces the person with the claim to do the work of demonstrating that their claim is true. And when this principle is ignored, conversations, at least the intellectual ones, become impossible. People throw out accusations, conspiracy theories, and wild assertions, and then sit back and watch others scramble to disprove them. Nothing gets resolved because no one is actually supporting their claims with evidence. But when the principle is followed, discussions suddenly become more productive. If somebody makes a claim, they actually present their evidence, and then others are allowed to evaluate said evidence. If it's strong, the claim is accepted, and if it's weak, the claim is rejected or held in suspense until better evidence appears. And this is how we make progress in understanding the world. The next time somebody makes a bold claim and then says, to prove me wrong, you'll know exactly what's happening. They're just trying to win an argument without meeting their burden of proof, hoping that you won't notice that they haven't actually demonstrated anything at all. Once you understand and learn how to internalize this principle, you'll see how often it gets violated, and you'll be much better equipped to navigate arguments without getting manipulated. So, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.